I sat at my desk, sipping on a mid-morning coffee my assistant brought in, though she used artificial sweetener, which I hated. I joked that I'd switch to black tea if it kept happening. My mind was preoccupied with a copyright issue that demanded urgent attention. But, as usual, the federal government was dragging its feet on releasing sensitive materials. They were sluggish as always, and it made it impossible to make any real progress. It got me thinking about how federal employees often dodged responsibility unless they were directly ordered to do something. I couldn't help but wonder how many hands a simple letter passed through before anyone acted. I felt stuck, unable to move forward on the next project, and facing potential financial losses if we had to destroy the items in question. The rise of liberal concerns had turned straightforward matters into bureaucratic nightmares, even changing job titles to keep up with the times. I was starting to feel too old for this kind of nonsense. "There's a young lady here to see you," Mia Jenkins, my assistant, announced as she stepped into my office. She wouldn't give her name, but handed me this picture. I took the photo from her and felt a knot form in my stomach. "Son of a cow," I muttered under my breath. "Why now?" The picture was of Sharon, my ex, and me on our wedding day, taken 18 years ago. It instantly reminded me of the betrayal, the cheating, and the heartache. People around me assumed I'd crawled back to nurse my wounds, and they weren't wrong. Back then, I didn't understand money or power, but I'd learned a lot since those days. "Ask her if she's Isabella or Sofia Lopez," I told Mia, handing her a USB drive and a Ziploc bag. "If she is, show her the video on this. If she wants a copy, give her everything and make sure the original comes back to me. Once you're done, come back, and I'll answer whatever questions you have." At 42, I come to terms with the fact that I was better off single. My brief marriage to Emily Rose Davidson had shattered my ability to trust. Now, anyone who wanted a place in my life had to earn it, which wasn't easy. I stood tall at 6 feet 4 inches, with a 38-inch waist and 200 pounds of muscle from my 2-hour gym sessions after work. My brown-black hair had started to gray around the edges, but I still turned heads. I'd had a few casual relationships here and there, but love and marriage were things I wasn't interested in anymore. About an hour later, Mia came back, leaving the door slightly open. "She still has a lot of questions," she said, sitting down with a serious look on her face. Her emerald eyes locked onto mine, waiting for me to speak. "Do you know which one it was?" I asked. "Sophia," she replied. "But who is she? And why was she so upset?" She was crying, saying we've been lied to our whole lives. If my gut's right, he's been lied to as well. I sighed. Sophia is one of a pair of identical twins. The clip you saw on the USB was her mother's last words to me before our first divorce hearing, 7 months before the twins were born. I only found out about them through friends. Sharon never told me she was pregnant. The rest of the stuff on that stick explains what would happen if I ever tried to reach out to them. Sharon's father, who was with the CIA, got me fired from the FBI on trumped-up charges because he hated me. The documents also suggest there's a hit on me if I interfere with their lives. He was a dangerous man with a lot of power. Sharon divorced me to marry my former best friend, who she'd been having an affair with for months. As far as I know, he's their real father. "How did she find you? And what does she want?" I asked, still puzzled. "Sophia found an old photo in their attic with your name on it. She Googled you, recognized who you were, and then found your marriage certificate and divorce papers. She tracked you down through Facebook and other searches," Mia explained. "She's here because her twin sister needs a bone marrow transplant, and time's running out." I furrowed my brow. Why would she come to me? I'm not their father. It doesn't add up. Sharon was already with their dad months before I even met her. Sophia suspected something, so she convinced the doctors to run a DNA test while they were testing for bone marrow compatibility, Mia said. Turns out Mr. Lopez isn't their biological father. Mia's serious expression suddenly broke into a big smile as I felt a lump in my throat. If Sophia was right, it meant Sharon had lied to me all those years ago. I could actually be their father. "I knew she was related to you the second I saw her," Mia said, standing up. "She has your look. It's unmistakable." I took a deep breath. "Are you ready for the biggest shock you've had in a while, Mia?" I said, still trying to process the news. "Send everything on that USB stick to my publishers. Make sure it's released in a way that can't be traced back to me, and don't reveal my pen name. Stress that it needs to go public quickly. Then find someone who could do a rush DNA test and set up an appointment. If it turns out I'm their father, I want proof before I confront Sharon. And if it's true, give me a lawyer. I'm going to fight for my parental rights. Clear my schedule. I need to get to Isabella's hospital as soon as possible. Now I've got to find Sophia, I added, standing up. Sophia, come in and introduce yourself, Mia called. Sophia stepped into the room, and the second I laid eyes on her, I knew. She looked exactly like my younger sister had at 16. I felt a wave of emotion hit me, and both Sophia and I started crying. Mia, always quick to capture important moments, snapped a few pictures on her phone before leaving us alone. You have an appointment for blood testing at 1 o'clock, Mia said when she returned. They promised to expedite it, and I charged it to the corporate card. I've also arranged for you to meet your sister, Lily, at Westfield House at 3. She'll make sure her kids are looked after, and you can share this important family news in private. I stood there, overwhelmed, watching Sophia as she walked toward me. My mind raced with questions, but I couldn't find the words. Instead, I pulled her into a tight hug just as Mia quietly closed the door behind us. It was surreal thinking I might actually be a father. Sophia seemed just as shaken, her body trembling as we left the office together. We kept the conversation light, both of us unsure where to start, taking it one small step at a time. After setting up an email for the clinic's test results, we decided to grab a late lunch. During the drive, I found out Sophia had skipped school and driven all day, only stopping to rest at a station. My gut reaction was anger. What kind of reckless stunt was that? But I bit my tongue, realizing I was starting to sound like an overprotective dad. Funny enough, it reminded me of something I might have done at her age. When we pulled up at Westfield House, I spotted Lily's car parked out front. I know we're meeting your sister, Sophia said, but why did Mia set this up without talking to you first? You're about to see why, I replied. Once you meet Lily, it'll make sense why Mia and I were convinced you and Isabella are my daughters, and why I was so shocked when the DNA test came back positive. Can I call you Dad? Sophia asked, her voice soft but hopeful. I couldn't help but laugh and smile. I'd love that. Westfield House was a nice, family-friendly restaurant, better than a Red Lobster, with a solid reputation. The owner and hostess led us straight to our private booth. I ordered a bottle of champagne and a stack of extra tissues, already sensing we'd need them. When we got there, Lily had her back to us. I asked Sophia to hold back for a moment as I approached. Hey sis, thanks for meeting me, I said. Lily looked up at me and smiled. You look like you're in a good mood. What's going on? Stand up, I said, motioning to Sophia. There's someone I want you to meet. As Sophia walked over, Lily turned around and froze. She looked like she was staring at a younger version of herself. Both had the same long brunette hair, high cheekbones, small ears, light blue eyes, and those warm, familiar smiles. Oh my God, Lily gasped. Ethan, you should have warned me. This is unbelievable. How long have you known? About 5 hours, Sophia said, her voice shaky with emotion. I surprised him at his office. Mia and Dad knew right away, and now, seeing you, I get why. The server quietly brought over tissues and seemed to understand why we needed privacy. Lily, still wiping away tears, mentioned that 3 more people were going to join us, so the hostess moved us to a bigger table. She called her husband and alerted our parents, telling them to come immediately, calling it a family emergency. Mom, of course, asked what was wrong, but Lily just said she couldn't explain over the phone. We were still emotional and trying to keep it together when I got a text from Mia. She said the publisher had released the information, and it would hit the 6 o'clock news. We'd barely finished our first glass of champagne when Lily's husband and our parents arrived. I couldn't help but chuckle when I heard Dad's booming voice. This better be good, he hollered. Lily and I stood to greet them. Mom, Dad, Max, I'd like you to meet Sharon's daughter, Sophia Lopez, Lily said, proud and beaming. My mother immediately recognized the resemblance and smiled wide, her eyes gleaming with pride. She'd always wanted a granddaughter, and now here she was. Dad, on the other hand, was left speechless, a rare occurrence for him. When he finally found his voice, he said, I see it, but it's still hard to believe. Mom sat beside Sophia, holding her hand, too overwhelmed to speak. Dad, never one to shy away from a celebration, ordered 2 more bottles of champagne. After our glasses were refilled, I stood up, raising mine. I think it's time to explain, I said, and Sophia began recording everything on my phone. I told them the whole story of how we met and what had happened earlier that day. After I finished, Dad stood up and faced Sophia. We don't need a DNA test to confirm what we already know. Welcome to the family, Sophia. You have 2 more aunts to meet soon, and I want you to promise us you'll always consider this family your home. Sophia took the phone and spoke into it. I came here looking for the truth, not knowing what I'd find. Today changed everything for Dad and me. We didn't know until now. Meeting Aunt Lily showed me what unconditional love is, and I know my twin sister Isabella will feel the same. I looked around the table as everyone got emotional again. Even Dad, who never cried, had tears in his eyes. Mom, holding up 2 fingers, cried even louder. I stopped the recording, catching the moment. Then Sophia added her and Isabella's contact info to my phone. She texted her sister, showing me the video she sent. The message read, "If what we think is true, the DNA test will confirm it. Watch the 6 o'clock news. Love, your twin." Mom, still in disbelief, asked to see photos of Sophia and Isabella. When Sophia pulled out her phone, Mom demanded copies to show off on her laptop, making sure everyone could see them full screen. After that, Sophia tucked her phone back in her purse, and it hit me. No one else knew where she was. Just then, my phone rang. It was Isabella. I stepped away to take the call, and Dad noticed me tearing up. He looked over with a raised brow, and Sophia mouthed, "It's my sister." Dad nodded in understanding. "Hello, this is Isabella," she said on the other end. After seeing the video, I had a call. Mom won't be home until at least 7 because she's stopping by the police station for an update on Sophia. I'm pretending I don't know anything. The police were here earlier and left their card. What should I do? Tell her to watch the 6 o'clock news and pay attention to what's revealed about me. Say you'll talk later when your parents aren't around and show her the video. Also, give her my number and tell her to text first before calling. She'll understand after she watches. I replied. What happens once we get the DNA proof? Isabella asked. Sophia and I are bringing the whole family if it comes to that, I said. The whole family? She sounded skeptical. In the Patterson family, blood's thicker than water. If I'm not a match, someone else will be. No doubt, I replied with a chuckle. You'll see. We might be strangers now, but family sticks together. We talked a little longer before hanging up, with Isabella's relieved sobs echoing in my ear. After I returned to the table and we ordered dinner, I explained to everyone why Sophia was here. Immediately, phones buzzed across the table as everyone started reaching out to gather potential matches. Mom, always the organizer, took charge. Sophia, how'd you get here? Dad asked. She grinned. I drove my old 1994 Voyager van. One step up from a rent-a-wreck, she joked, laughing. It's still in Dad's parking lot, Sophia said about her old van. Dad didn't miss a beat. Son, take that thing to my dealership tomorrow morning. No way she's driving that junk back. It's a wonder she made it here at all. His tone left no room for debate. He turned to Sophia, giving her a warm smile. You've got the same stubborn streak your father had at your age, he chuckled. Determined as ever. What are you thinking of giving her? I asked, already knowing where he was heading. She can pick one out herself, Dad replied, flashing me a wink and a grin. Sophia's eyes lit up. If I get to choose, I'd love something with 4-wheel drive. I'm an outdoorsy kind of girl. Dad's grin grew wider. You'll fit right in then. This family practically lives outside when the weather's good. Fishing, camping, hunting. It's what we do. He started telling stories about the summer I learned to barefoot water ski, rolling out tales like he was the star of his own show. Before the night was over, my parents made sure Sophia stayed with them. They figured it wouldn't look right for her to stay alone with me. Dad offered to drive her over to her van and then followed her home to make sure she got there safely. Mom, meanwhile, was practically buzzing with excitement, already plotting ways to spoil her new granddaughter. Dad didn't make it home until after midnight, waiting up just to be sure they arrived. Around 10 p.m., I got a call from a police investigator. He said it had taken him a couple of hours to run a background check on me. The media had already latched onto the story, full of questions about the information I'd released. We talked for a bit about the situation and what might come next. Seeing the 3 generations in that video had answered a lot of the investigators' questions. I let him know we were rushing the DNA tests and that Sophia was staying with my folks. Once the results were in, we'd see if I was a match for Isabella. I asked him to buy us some time, promising to update him when we had more answers. Later, Isabella told me he'd reported everything back to her. Facing my past again felt different this time. I wasn't afraid anymore, certainly not of Sharon's family and their influence. I knew I had the truth on my side, and I was going to use it. The courts, the media, whatever I needed. I wasn't interested in revenge. I just wanted justice. I had the proof, the means, and the resolve to take them on, no matter how powerful they were. The next morning, I went to my office to sort out any last-minute tasks and make sure Mia had everything covered while I was gone. Mia was hovering around, constantly checking emails like a concerned mom. She kept asking about my day, digging for every little detail. To be honest, I never minded it. There was something about Mia that made me look twice. Even now, she still had that natural beauty. Her brown hair framed her face perfectly, and her sharp green eyes always seemed to pierce right through you. She had a way of commanding attention without even trying. As a single guy, I noticed her more than I cared to admit, though I was glad she never seemed to catch on. Finally, the DNA results came through. Mia grabbed the printout, eyes wide with excitement. "It's confirmed. You're her father," she nearly shouted. She wasted no time, calling the lab to send the info to Isabella's specialist, and immediately began researching the toughest litigation lawyers in New York. After narrowing down a few options, she landed on one who was more than eager to take the case. He agreed to work on a contingency basis, confident that the DNA proof made this a sure win. We were going to sue my ex-wife, her husband, and her parents for keeping me from my daughters all these years. That bogus court order they'd used to keep me away, it would be thrown out, exposing how they had manipulated everything. Even the supposed hit they'd put on my life, whether it was real or not, would demonstrate the lengths they went to control me. The lawyer was already gearing up for a major legal battle, and we hadn't even touched the government side of things yet. I told Mia to send a dusty, gray box from the safe to the new lawyer. It was filled with all the legal proof I'd collected over the years, showing how Sharon's father had sabotaged my career and my marriage. I'd spent years tracking down that evidence, pulling strings in the government to get what I needed. Then, I found out the police officer had already released a video, and the story had exploded. The media was calling it a runaway daughter finds her biological father to save her sister's life situation. It had gone viral overnight. Later that day, I called my mom. "It's confirmed," I said, my voice barely containing the emotion. "I'm a father. Twice over." "Oh, thank God," she said, her voice breaking. "Be ready to leave tomorrow at 7 a.m. from the dealership. I'll spread the word. Have you told your daughters yet?" The next morning, we were on the road. Sophia and I were in a brand new, fully loaded Ford Explorer, leading a caravan of 33 cars with my parents in a tour bus right behind us. The family had come out in force, ready to do whatever it took. While we were driving, my phone rang. Sophia answered and put it on speaker. "You're being tracked by CNN," Isabella said after our initial hellos. "They're following a tour bus with a sign that says, 'The Donovans are coming.' The media is saying that 1 out of 141 of you should be a match." "Well, we've got the DNA proof that he's our father," Sophia said, sounding proud. "And Dad got me a new Ford Explorer, so things are looking up. Dad told me if the DNA test came back positive, a lot of family would show up, but I wasn't expecting this," Isabella exclaimed. "This whole thing has given me hope like I've never felt before. I met so many relatives this morning, I can't even keep track of their names. It'll take me weeks to remember everyone. I'm so proud. I want to change my last name to Donovan," Sophia said, laughing. "I had no idea families like this existed." I nearly drove off the road, overwhelmed by everything happening. That's when it hit me. I had to turn this incredible journey into my next book. The girls kept chatting, and just as we were getting into another conversation, Isabella had to go. Mom just walked in, she said, "Dad, are you okay?" Sophia asked, noticing how emotional I was getting. "How do you think I feel?" I said, my voice shaking. "I've just discovered I have 2 daughters who were raised by my ex-wife and her lover, and I had no clue. One is so full of life, independent and strong, just like I would have been. She even wants to take my last name. And the other, she's fighting for her life." Sophia's voice quivered as she spoke. "I was so focused on saving Isabella that I didn't think about what this would mean for you. I didn't realize how much pain this might cause. I wasn't a match because of a defective gene I got from our mother. I know I've caused some emotional chaos, and that's going to stick with you. Can you forgive me?" "Forgive you?" For what? I asked, surprised she even thought that way. Coming into my life? Turning everything upside down? I said, fighting through tears. No, that's what living is all about. You've given everyone someone new to love, and you've given me the chance to be the dad I never got to be. Sophia looked at me, her eyes full of emotion, as I continued. Your grandparents adore you. My mom is so proud, and seeing her face in you, it means the world to her. You and Isabella are her favorites by birthright. She's been spoiling us both like crazy. Every time she buys me something, she picks out the same for Isabella too. She jokes that she's making up for lost time. That's your grandmother for you. She's already glued herself to you. You'll find it impossible to escape her. Believe me, I've tried. I gave Sophia a wry smile, knowing full well how relentless my mother could be. Lily and my sisters are going to be talking about this for weeks, and by the time they're done, this will become a family legend, passed down for generations. The conversation shifted as we learned what was happening with Sharon. As soon as she saw the live news feed about our arrival, she spiraled into a series of panic attacks. All the walls she had built over the years were starting to come down. Meanwhile, Isabella, feeling stronger than she had in months, decided to confront her mother. Mom, Isabella had asked as soon as she turned off her phone, why did you hide the truth about our real dad? When Sharon didn't answer, Isabella pressed on, her frustration clear. You kept the truth from us our whole lives, made decisions that weren't yours to make. What gave you the right to play God? Even Dad didn't know the truth. If Sophia hadn't dug into this and found him, would you have let me die? Sharon didn't have any answers. She never thought the truth would come out. Her father had hated me from the very beginning, doing everything he could to push me away. Thankfully, the doctor walked in just as the tension reached its peak. We received DNA results from a man we didn't know, confirming that he's Isabella's biological father, the doctor explained. He's on his way here to be tested, and there's a good chance he's a match for bone marrow. He'll be here tomorrow afternoon, and for his protection, he'll be under guard. Isabella turned back to Sharon. Mom, my biological father is on his way here with 140 other people, just in case he's not a match. He's risking his life to give me a chance. Why would he do that? Sharon, still stunned, could only mutter, why? Because to him, blood is thicker than water. Even though I'm a stranger to him, I'm still family. And in his family, that's what matters. Isabella's voice was steady, but the weight of her words was heavy. You had to know, Mom. We look just like his mother. You can't deny it anymore. Watch this video. It'll prove everything. Sharon watched the video of my family meeting Sophia, and the truth hit her like a freight train. 3 generations of the same face. It was undeniable now. She couldn't lie her way out of this. Her daughters had the proof, and everything she and her husband had done was falling apart. Then, a man appeared at the entrance of Isabella's room, asking for Sharon. When she confirmed who she was, he handed her a large envelope. You've been served, he said, and left. Sharon dropped to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. Isabella, still furious, watched her mother break down with zero pity. Mom, she asked coldly, why did Grandpa put a contract on my biological dad's life? But Sharon stayed silent, as Isabella knew she would. Meanwhile, George Harrison Lopez had just left a corporate meeting when he was served legal papers as well. He sat down in the reception area and began reading. The first document was a lawsuit against him and his wife for denying me my legal rights as the father of my daughters. The second accused him and Sharon's parents of conspiring to ruin my marriage and career. The lawsuit demanded sole custody of my daughters, arguing that if Sophia hadn't found me, I'd have never known about them. It also implied moral abandonment, claiming they would have let Isabella die to keep their secrets. With the media already on top of this story, defending themselves in court would be nearly impossible. As George read through the papers, he couldn't help but think back to when we were college roommates and football teammates. We had both chased after Sharon, but I was the one who won her over. George had even stood as my best man at our wedding. Yet, Sharon's father never approved of me because of my background. He manipulated George into pursuing Sharon, and George went along with it. With Sharon's father pulling strings, I was sent away on FBI assignments, leaving Sharon and George alone. Eventually, they became lovers while I was undercover for months. Sharon's father had even recorded their affair, using it as leverage when I returned. Sharon, unaware she was pregnant at the time, assumed her missed periods were due to stress. Her father pushed me into filing for divorce, and by the time the twins were born, Sharon and George knew I was their father, but it was too late. Her father had already gotten me fired from the FBI with false charges, and I spent 4 years clearing my name while they moved on, getting married and having 2 more sons. Now, George wondered how Sharon would react once all these truths were exposed. Meanwhile, Sophia, the rest of our group, and I finally arrived at our hotel around 9 p.m., utterly drained from a 14-hour drive. We ordered a light meal to our rooms and crashed immediately, knowing we had a 5 a.m. wake-up call. Sophia and I had to leave earlier than the others because I had a secret meeting lined up with a police officer and an FBI representative. The rest of the convoy planned to hit the road at 7 for the 6-hour drive ahead. Sophia dropped me off at the Oswego Police Department, where I met with Detective Adam Bennett and FBI Agent Blake Sullivan. We spent over an hour and a half going over everything related to my ex-father-in-law, and I provided them with my lawyer's contact details along with a USB stick filled with evidence I had compiled. After the meeting, I was officially placed under protection until I left town. With a security escort, I headed to the hospital for a blood draw to determine if I was a bone marrow match. As I approached Isabella's private hospital room, I could hear Sophia and Isabella talking inside. The hospital staff recognized me from my pen name, and one of the nurses even asked me to sign a book. As I walked into Isabella's room, Sophia looked up surprised. "Dad," she exclaimed, "I didn't expect you so soon." Isabella, lying in bed, looked incredibly frail. Her skin was loose, her body weak, but her smile was wide, and her eyes sparkled with hope. "Isabella," I said gently, "they're rushing the test. We should have the results in about 30 minutes. The rest of the family is checking into their hotels now. My parents are getting their bone marrow drawn as we speak. They'll be here soon," I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the emotion swelling inside me. "If more than one of us is a match, the doctor's going to do a double transplant, one in each arm." Isabella's face crumpled as tears flowed. I sat down on the edge of her bed, pulling her close, holding her tight until she calmed down. Sophia, ever the observant one, snapped a picture of us both, tears of relief and joy streaming down our faces. She beamed with pride, and she had every right to. I realized just how much she had done to bring us all together, and seeing my 2 daughters united like this hit me harder than I ever expected. "Grandma, Grandpa, come in and meet my sister," Sophia called out. My parents stepped in, their eyes lighting up as they took in the scene. The 5 of us sat together, talking for over an hour, sharing stories, hopes, and everything we could before Isabella's doctor, Dr. Carter, entered with a smile. "My mother and I are perfect matches for Isabella," I said, almost in disbelief. Dr. Carter nodded. "We're ready to check you both in for surgery at 6 a.m. tomorrow." We both agreed without hesitation, and my dad whispered under his breath, "Thank God. We've been praying for this miracle the whole way up." "Don't you need my parents' permission?" Isabella asked, suddenly unsure. "Normally, yes," Dr. Carter explained, "but we received a court order this morning thanks to Mr. Donovan. It allows us to proceed as long as he or another relative is a match. The judge determined that your mother and stepfather weren't prioritizing your well-being. Mr. Donovan is covering all costs that insurance doesn't," Dr. Carter added, and Sophia turned to Isabella with a knowing smile. "I'm not surprised, sis," Sophia said. "With what Mom and George did, Dad had no choice. He had no legal rights, so we had to use the courts to make sure there were no delays." Right then, a security guard appeared in the doorway. "You're about to be on national news," he said. Isabella flipped the TV onto CNN, where my identity was revealed. I was not just an ordinary man, but the author of a best-selling book series estimated to be worth $40 million. Sophia, Isabella, and even the doctor stared at me in disbelief. My parents were equally stunned. They'd had no idea. "My God, Dad," Isabella said, her voice full of awe. "I've read all your books. They're amazing." I laughed, shaking my head. After my old life was destroyed, I had to reinvent myself. Writing became my therapy. That first book's success changed everything. I kept writing, revealing the raw truth about the world, society, and morals, whether people liked it or not. For the first time in 15 years, I was checking into a hospital along with my mom. Isabella had wanted to share a room with me, but hospital security wouldn't allow it. Sophia spent the evening running back and forth between 3 rooms, checking on all of us. My dad made some calls to update family members, while Sharon and George arrived later, clearly upset and unwelcome. Their cold reception from everyone was immediate. "Isabella," Sharon asked, a sharp edge in her voice, "how is this happening?" "Mom," Isabella replied, her voice calm but strong. "I'm being prepped for surgery in the morning. I'm getting a double bone marrow transplant because Dad and Grandma are perfect matches." Sharon's face went pale, and Isabella smiled slightly. "Do you know who Jason Blackstone is, Mom? He's your favorite author, right?" "Well, Jason Blackstone is actually Dad, Ethan James Donovan, my biological father." Sharon and George froze, visibly shaken by the news. They'd likely hoped the court case would just fade away. But seeing my success, they now knew I wasn't after money. I was after justice. "You always believed in law and order, didn't you, Dad?" Isabella asked. "That's why you were such a successful FBI agent before everything fell apart." Isabella then dropped another bomb. "By the way, Mom, did you know Grandpa's been in FBI custody all day? You might want to check with Grandma to see if he's back home." "Why is this happening, Mom?" Isabella's smile grew, confident now. "Sophia, and I want answers. Sophia's around here somewhere, probably in Dad's room or with Grandma Patterson if you're interested." A little later, Sophia and I were in my hospital room, discussing how she'd handle her mother when Sharon found her. There was a knock at the door, and a security guard peeked in. "Mr. Donovan, do you know Mia Jenkins?" I smiled. "Yes, of course." The door opened, and Mia stepped in, her familiar presence instantly bringing comfort. Mia had been my rock for the past 10 years. I'd helped her through her divorce when her husband left her for his assistant. And even now, at 35, she was still adjusting to single life, though she still wore her wedding ring. She was like family to me, and I'd often wondered why she hadn't found someone new. "What are you doing here?" I asked, smiling. "I'm here to do what I always do. Look after you," she said matter-of-factly. "Dr. Carter says you'll be here for at least 3 days. And if you're a match, your arm will need a week to heal. I've already booked a private jet and hotel on the corporate card." Sophia's phone buzzed with a text. She smiled, then looked at me. "FYI, Dad, she loves you." "Couldn't stay away," she said with a teasing grin. I raised an eyebrow at Mia, and we both laughed. Just then, the security guard returned. "Mr. Donovan, Sharon and George Lopez want to see you. Do you want to allow them in?" "Only after they've been searched," Mia said, cutting in. The guard nodded and hesitated before asking, "And what's your relationship to Mr. Donovan?" "I'm his fiancée," Mia said, holding up her hand. "Didn't you see my ring?" Sophia winked at me and mouthed, "Told you." I couldn't help but chuckle. As Sharon and George walked in, Sophia turned to me, her tone serious. "Dad, I wouldn't trust these two. They're just trying to cover themselves." "You don't even know the half of it, Sophia," Mia chimed in. "Your dad's lawyer has video footage showing George receiving a check from your grandfather to break up your parents' marriage. The deal was that if he succeeded, George would get to manage your grandparents' finances and receive a 3% annual fee." Sharon's face went white. "How do you know this is true?" she asked, her voice trembling. "And who are you?" "Mom, she's Dad's fiancée and a brilliant researcher," Sophia said, her voice firm. "Her name is Mia Jenkins, and I trust her more than you." Sharon looked stunned, realizing how far her daughters were drifting from her. "She's telling the truth, Sharon," I said. "I ordered my lawyer to release all the videos and audio tapes to the FBI, including a letter from your father admitting he paid for the recordings. His hatred for me was so deep that he didn't care who he hurt in the process." Sharon turned to George. "Is this true?" she asked, and his silence gave her all the answers she needed. In that moment, Sharon realized just how much she had lost when I divorced her, the only man who had ever truly loved her. She turned to Mia and said, "A word of advice. Don't let anyone manipulate you the way I did." Then, looking back at me, she whispered, "Ethan, I want to talk to you alone after the surgery. Right now, I need to go home and think things over. Will you walk me to my car, Sophia?" Sharon asked softly. Sophia nodded. "I'll be back soon. Mom, and I need to settle some things." Then, looking at Mia, she added, "Keep an eye on Dad until I get back." We watched them leave. Sharon held herself together until she stepped outside, then broke down crying. Mia and I exchanged a look. We both knew Sharon had no idea how deep this conspiracy ran until now. George, always used to getting his way, stood frozen, paralyzed by fear. The truth had finally come out, and their lives were falling apart. Sharon would never trust George again. "Ethan, I knew this day would come," George said, his voice low. "I always dreaded it, but I convinced myself you wouldn't return. If we just run into each other by chance, maybe I could have brushed it off. But not this. I didn't see this coming." He shook his head, resigned. "It's better if I just leave and keep my mouth shut." With that, he turned and walked out, leaving Mia and me alone in the room. I glanced at Mia, and for the first time, I noticed her blush. I was looking at her differently now, like a man in love for real, not just the distant admiration I'd felt before. For once, I was letting my guard down, but I couldn't help wondering, was she serious about her feelings? Or was I just now realizing my own? Did I care for her as more than a friend? Whatever it was, my daughters had opened my eyes. I'd been living through other people's happiness, avoiding my own. "Mia," I said, my voice soft but sincere, "we need to have a real conversation while I'm recovering. These past few days have made me realize how complacent I've been. I've been sitting on the sidelines instead of stepping up and living my life." Mia smiled knowingly. "Ethan, after my divorce, you stepped in when I needed someone most. My kids were young, and you've been there for them more than their own father ever was. You've shown up for baseball games, father-daughter dances, and all the big moments. I know why you've always paid me more than necessary. You wanted to make sure my kids were looked after, just like they were your own." I tried to speak, but her words hit me like a ton of bricks. She wasn't wrong, and I knew it. Sophia's words from earlier had already started to stir things up inside me. But Mia's honesty was cutting deep. I moved closer, sitting beside her and taking her hand in mine. Looking into her eyes, I finally found the courage to speak. "Sharon betrayed me. Her father's power crushed me. My best friend stabbed me in the back. I've lived with the fear of a threat hanging over me for years, and I didn't even realize how much it had shut me down. But now that I see it, Mia, is it too late for us? Can we finally go on our first real date?" Mia smiled, shaking her head. "Took you long enough, you fool," she said, laughing before leaning in and kissing me. "I'm texting the kids right now to let them know we're officially a couple. We're doing this." "You sound pretty sure of yourself," I said, raising an eyebrow. "I've had plenty of time to figure you out," she teased. I smiled and pulled out my phone, texting Sophia to check on things. I thanked her for everything she'd done and asked how things were going. A few moments later, she replied, "Mom didn't know everything. She's taking it hard. She won't be back tonight. Let Isabella know." Mia and I made our way to Isabella's room. After introducing Mia as my girlfriend, we filled Isabella in on everything that had happened and showed her Sophia's message. Just as we were finishing up, my sister Lily walked in, grinning from ear to ear. "I just had to come meet her," Lily said with a laugh. "Mia, what are you doing here?" "Oh, wait. I know. He finally figured it out, didn't he?" Mia blushed again as Lily looked at her with a knowing smile. "Took him long enough," she said before turning to Isabella. "Isabella, this is your Aunt Lily. And the man walking in behind her is Uncle Max, her husband. You'll find out soon enough that we Donovan speak our minds, whether people like it or not." I excused myself for a moment and texted Sophia again, asking what kind of pizza Isabella liked. Sophia quickly replied, "Everything but anchovies." I wasted no time ordering 3 extra-large pizzas and 3 2-liter sodas for quick delivery. I also called Dad, asking him to bring Mom up in about half an hour so we could have an impromptu pizza party. We probably bent the hospital's no-food rule a little, but the nurses let it slide. Even the head nurse, who had come in to calm us down, left with a slice of pizza. Later, she pulled me aside and said, "What you did tonight lifted everyone's spirits on this floor. Thank you for that." At 4 a.m., they came to take my mom and me to prepare for the surgery. We stayed close, supporting each other right up until we were wheeled into the operating room. I stayed awake until the anesthesia kicked in, and when I woke up, it was all over. Now, all we could do was wait and hope. Dr. Carter soon came in with good news. The bone marrow transplant had gone well. It would take a few hours to know if it had worked, but everything looked positive. The relief in the room was palpable. Most of the family started making preparations to head home, but Mia stayed by my side. "You're the worst patient," she said, smiling. "I'm not sick," I replied a little too defensively. You're impossible, she laughed. Impatient, stubborn, and miserable. Keep acting like this, and you're going to ruin your reputation. She told me that Mom was doing well, and once she was sure I was stable, she handed me my phone. The first texts I saw were from Mia's kids. When does she get her engagement ring, Dad? And when do we get to meet our new sisters? I showed Mia the messages, laughing. Your kids are sharp. I told them I was coming here to look after you, she explained. After the surgery, they had a million questions, so I told them everything. They weren't surprised at all. They said, Mom, he's always treated us like his own. We've always thought of him as our dad. Mia's eyes teared up as she read the text again. Looks like we're not going to have a long engagement, I said, smiling. Have you heard from the twins? I asked. Sophia and her mom are with Isabella, Mia replied. Isabella's doing well, considering everything. She's still pretty groggy, but she's asking a lot of questions. Sophia told her about the pizza party, and Isabella's excited about how much she looks like her aunt and grandma. She's already planning a girls' day out with them when she recovers. Find me some pants. I need to see her myself. And then I want to check on Mom, I said. The nurses tried to tell me it was too soon after surgery, but I wouldn't be stopped. Mia and I walked to Isabella's room, hand in hand. When we arrived, we were both struck by the change. Isabella looked healthier already. Her complexion had improved, and the light in her eyes almost made me tear up. Who are Ava and Lucas Jenkins? Sophia asked as we settled in. They're my kids, 13 and 11 years old. Why? Mia replied. I got a Facebook friend request from both of them this morning, Sophia said, smiling. So did Isabella. I handed Sophia my phone. You two need to read what they sent me, I said. Sophia read the message, smiled, and passed the phone to Isabella. I'm going to need this back. I have to add their numbers to my contacts, I said with a grin. A little while later, Sharon asked to speak to me privately. We headed to the waiting room, where she took a deep breath before speaking. Ethan, she began slowly. I had a long talk with my mom last night. She remembers how much Dad hated you, but she never expected any of this. My daughters have decided they want to stay here for the rest of the school year, but after that, they want to live with you. They also want to change their last name to Donovan. They told me that what George and I did is unforgivable. They don't trust me anymore, and I understand why. They've made it clear that if I try to fight them, they'll take me to court. So, will you take them? You know, my family, they wouldn't let me say no even if I wanted to. And honestly, I'd be more than happy to take them in, I said, smiling. Mia and I will just need to find a bigger house. But here's the deal. I'll drop the suit against you if you agree to joint custody. I paused, watching Sharon's reaction. The lawsuit will still move forward against the rest of your family, but the twins are old enough to decide what they want for themselves. Sharon nodded, accepting the joint custody arrangement. I offered to cover the cost of the twins' name change, but she refused. We walked back into Isabella's room together, where the girls were watching us closely. Mia, looks like we're going to need a 6-bedroom house, I said, grinning. Mia's eyes lit up, and the girls erupted in cheers. Sharon spoke up. Girls, your father and I agree. You'll get your wish, if Mia's on board. I'll call the lawyer tomorrow to start the paperwork for the name changes. I added, feeling a surge of happiness. Ethan, are you ready for this? Mia asked, her tone both teasing and serious. A house with teenagers? No one's ever truly ready, I replied, laughing. But we'll adapt. I'm just now wrapping my head around the idea of 2 daughters carrying my name. Make that 4, Mia chimed in. Ava and Tim want you to adopt them. They've already started signing their names as Donovan. Looks like I'd better call Roger Mauser's firm to get the adoption papers started, I said, shaking my head in disbelief. And then I'll text the kids to fill them in on our plans. We should also start looking at neighborhoods with the best schools. Sophia picked up her phone and dialed, putting the call on speaker. Hello? Ava's voice came through. Who is this? What do you want? It's Sophia, your soon-to-be older sister, Sophia explained. Is Lucas with you? Can you prove it? Because I'm not sure I believe you, Ava said skeptically. Dad always told us not to talk to strangers without proof. Seriously, Ava? You think I'm scamming you? Sophia laughed. Mia jumped in. Ava, this is Mia. I'm with your dad, Ethan. And yes, you're talking to his daughter, Sophia. We're all going to be Donovans soon. Isabella and Sophia are changing their last names, and Ethan is starting the process to adopt you and Tim. Finally, Tell Dad it's about time, Ava said, her voice softening. How's Isabella doing? She's doing well, Isabella chimed in from the bed. I'm improving, and I'll text you both so we can stay in touch. We're so happy for you, Lucas added. Just so you know, your dad has been the best father we could ask for. He's been better than any of our friends' parents, and Mom's been in love with him forever. When we all get together, it's important that you both accept we're all siblings now. Nothing more, nothing less. Both of my daughters nodded in agreement, and Mia, tears in her eyes, squeezed my hand. They've adopted your values, Ethan, she said softly. You should be so proud. I was. After saying goodbye for now, Mia and I headed down to check on my mom. Dad was sitting with her when we walked in, and his smile told me he already knew something was up. Mom, look at you. You're up and about already, I said, pulling her into a gentle hug. Have you seen Isabella yet? She's looking better already. She looks stronger, but it's still early, I replied, settling into a chair. But we need to talk. Dad looked at me seriously. We're not going anywhere. What's on your mind? Isabella and Sophia are going to live with me after the school year. They're changing their last names to Donovan. Sharon agreed to joint custody, but the twins made the final decision. That's amazing news, Mom said, smiling, and Dad nodded in agreement. That's not all, Mia said, stepping in. Ethan has decided to make an honest woman out of me. Margaret, are you ready to help plan a wedding? Mom's eyes filled with tears, and Dad grinned like a proud father. They didn't need to say anything. Their approval was written all over their faces. I'm also going to adopt Ava and Lucas. They'll be Donovans too, I added. Mia and I will start looking for a house as soon as we get back. Dad leaned back in his chair, chuckling. What got your head out of your rear end, he teased. We all knew how you felt about each other. Henry, behave yourself, Mom scolded, smacking him lightly. This isn't one of your car deals. Mia, have you thought about what kind of wedding you want? Mom asked. We haven't really talked about it yet, but since we're blending 3 families, I think it should be a family affair, Mia said, smiling. Lily can be my maid of honor. Max can be Ethan's best man. His brothers-in-law can be ushers. Isabella and Sophia will be bridesmaids. Ava will be the flower girl, and Lucas the ring bearer. And Dad, she said, looking at my father, will you walk me down the aisle? With my own father? That depends, Dad said with a wink. Who's paying for this thing? And will there be enough Jack Daniels at the reception? Everyone laughed, and Mia turned to me. What do you think? I think it's perfect. It will bring everyone together, I replied. If that's what you want, let's do it. Should we invite Sharon? Mia asked cautiously. No, my parents said in unison. Mom, Dad, I understand where you're coming from, but things are about to get messy in the next few weeks, I said, sighing. I'm suing the federal government, Sharon's parents, and her husband. But I think Sharon suffered just as much as I did. She's paying for her mistakes now, in ways we can't even imagine. She feels like she's lost her daughters forever. Maybe inviting her to the wedding could help heal some of those wounds, for the girls too. Everyone fell silent, stunned. Where did that wisdom come from? My dad finally asked, looking at me with genuine surprise. These last few days have taught me a lot, I said, squeezing Mia's hand. Sophia's arrival made me realize how much I've been missing out on. We returned to my room, and exhaustion from the surgery finally took over. I fell asleep almost immediately while Mia sat beside me, watching the news. When I woke up, she filled me in. Charles Davidson and George Lopez had both been arrested for lying to the FBI. The person behind the hit on my life had turned state's evidence, and my lawyer had released details about my wrongful termination from the FBI, prompting an internal investigation. Dr. Carter came in shortly after. You and your mother are doing well. You'll both be released tomorrow, but you'll need follow-ups and to get those stitches removed in about a week, he said. Isabella was making incredible progress, but the real challenge would come when they started easing her off the medication. We had a long talk with my parents, and they decided to stay in town until she was truly on the mend. They'd fly back with us on the private plane, so Dad booked a room in the same hotel as Mia, while we sent the bus driver back home. Over the next few days, the media ran wild with stories of lies, backstabbing, and shady deals that destroyed my marriage and career. They spent an entire day picking apart how Sharon's father had fed her those rumors and twisted lies, manipulating her into believing the worst. Watching it all unfold publicly was painful, like seeing her life torn apart in slow motion. Meanwhile, Mia and I went to visit Isabella one last time before we headed home. Dr. Carter couldn't stop grinning, saying she was well on her way to a full recovery. As if the chaos with the media wasn't enough, someone must have decided to clear things up. Suddenly, the security clearance we needed for my book was granted. Over 1 million copies were set to hit the shelves in 2 weeks. I had 2 first editions shipped overnight, signed them, and Mia wrapped them up, hiding them in a shopping bag to surprise the girls. We timed it so Sophia would be with Isabella when we showed up. Mia wasted no time, grinning as she said, "So, your dad and I have set the wedding date. It's happening the first weekend in August, and Aunt Lily will be my maid of honor. How would you two feel about being my bridesmaids?" Isabella didn't hesitate. "Hell yes," she shouted, her face lighting up. Then she turned to Mia, her voice softer. "Mia, when I first walked into Dad's office, I was terrified. But you," she paused, smiling. "You looked right at me and said, 'You're Sharon's daughter. How are we going to handle this?' I'll never forget that. You accepted me from the very first second. I'd be honored to be part of your wedding. And, if you're okay with it, I'd like to call you Mom." The 3 of them embraced, and I couldn't believe my eyes as Isabella jumped up from the bed, full of energy. When things calmed down a bit, I pulled out the gifts. "I've got something for you both," I said, handing them the wrapped books. When they tore off the paper and saw what was inside, their eyes went wide. To one of the 2 prettiest ladies who call me Dad, I had written, signing it as both Jason Blackstone and Ethan James Donovan. Isabella held the book, tears welling up in her eyes. It was my biggest one yet, over 600 pages. "Dad, you've already given me so much. I didn't need this," she said, her voice cracking as she ran into my arms. "Before you came into my life, they told me I had days left. Sophia knew it too. I don't know what made her go up into that attic, but I'm so glad she did because she brought me you." She clung to me tightly, while Sophia stood there, her eyes shining. "Dad, there's something else you should know," Sophia said, breaking the moment. "Dr. Carter said if Isabella had only gotten 1 transplant, it might not have worked. The double transplant shocked her system into responding. She's gained 10 pounds in the last 6 days." I nodded, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. "I didn't know if you'd come," Sophia continued, "but you didn't even hesitate. You showed up with the whole family, and because of that, I'm getting my best friend back." I took a breath, trying to shift the mood. "How's your mom holding up?" "She's filed for divorce and started therapy to process everything. She finally understands what you went through, and she's ashamed of how she handled it all. She says only someone who's lived through that kind of betrayal can understand the kind of hell it puts you through. Her job and friends are helping her cope, but rebuilding trust is going to be hard," Isabella explained. "You're right," I said. "Regaining trust takes time, and sometimes it comes from unexpected places. For me, it was the day Sophia walked into my office. Mia smiled, squeezing my hand. Thank God she did. Ethan had me thinking I'd be waiting forever." She turned to the girls. "Now, stand with your dad so I can snap a few pictures. I'm framing the best one for his desk." Later that afternoon, as we stepped off the plane, we were greeted by Mia's parents and her kids. Ava and Lucas practically knocked me over with excitement, their energy contagious. Even my dad, always the jokester, was beaming as he listened to them call me Dad. It hit me then, Lucas would have 2 older sisters and a younger one, just like me. Ava hugged my mom tightly. "I'm so happy you're going to be my grandma," she said, grinning. Standing there with my family growing by the second, I couldn't help but reflect on how fast things were changing. Blessings I hadn't expected were showing up left and right. Mia and I decided to put some of our earlier plans on hold until after the wedding. She took over finding a house, which freed me up to start writing my first fiction novel. I'd always focused on exposing corruption, but this project was different. We kept close contact with the twins, and before long, Mia found a beautiful 20-acre property with a barn that needed a little work. As Isabella continued to improve, she went back to school part-time. We hired a team to design the new house, a sturdy steel and brick structure with an outdoor kitchen, large patio, pool, and a 4-bay garage. With Mia cutting back her office hours, I had time to crank out over 300 pages, eventually publishing my first novel under my real name. Sharon finalized her divorce from George, using my lawyer to secure alimony and educational support for the twins. My lawsuits were heading into mediation, and it seemed like everyone on the other side had lost their fight. As the school year ended, we waited eagerly for the twins to arrive. Lucas, always the sharp-eyed one, spotted their car pulling up our driveway first. We rushed outside to greet them, and when they stepped out of the Explorer, I was blown away. Isabella had recovered so well that I couldn't tell her apart from Sophia. Mia leaned in and whispered, "Don't worry, we'll figure it out." Lucas, in true big brother fashion, grabbed their bags while Mia gave the girls a tour of the house. In my office, 3 copies of my latest book, Unexpected Blessings, sat on the desk. It was a fictionalized account of everything we'd been through, and I couldn't think of a more fitting title for this new chapter in our lives. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. New cheating wife stories tomorrow.